I quit my job after telling off a 4-year-old for shaking his cup at me. What's the dumbest thing that has set you off at work? I was a lifeguard for an uppity condo association when I was in college. Every day I had to deal with this typically rich, spoiled, entitled brat of a 12-year-old boy. The last straw occurred during finals. I had had very little sleep. My car was up and I had 2 tough tests that day that drained me even further. I was sitting in my chair watching the pool and the brat walked up to me carrying my keys with a pair of barbecue tongs. "Hey, I found your keys, now." My keys were attached to a metal 2 fingers tequila rectangle thingy. So, not thinking things through, I open my hand and he drops the keys into them. It took about 2 seconds before I realized they were red hot. The little had let them sit in the hot coals of a grill for a while before picking them up with the tongs and bringing them to me. The smirk on his face was begging me to throttle him. I came very close to knocking the out of him. But at least had the clarity to know what would happen if I did. I closed the pool and went to the condo association office to let them know I would not work if this kid was allowed in the pool from then on. I was fired on the spot. Not me, but an acquaintance. She was worked at a grocery store in the produce section for a few years. She was stocking the bananas and a customer came up to her, grabbed a bunch of bananas, held it up and said rather sharply, "These bananas are green." To which she clapped her hands and said, "Very good." Got fired. I am the only male worker in my workforce in retail. It was a very busy day and the store was moving and I had to keep on top of things. I get this very annoyed woman coming up to me yelling at me to hurry when I asked how her day was. She had returned a crap load of things. Our return policy is we can only give money back in the form it was paid for. I told her I just couldn't give her cash back. I am a pune and not a manger, so I could not override the system to give cash back. She kept saying she wanted cash back and nothing else. I explained to her our whole return policy without ever losing my temper. She then demands to see my manager, who is female. My manager says the exact same thing I said. The woman was like, "Oh, okay, I understand." So then my manager was giving her money back on her card she paid with. Then the woman was like, "That's what you get for hiring unintelligent men." I had been there 9 months. My boss suddenly stopped doing the transaction, cancelled it, and said, "Have a nice day." The woman was like, "What about my money?" My boss was like, "Too bad. This man was doing everything right. Now get out of my store." I am a manager and had a guy refuse to talk to me because I am female and he didn't want a woman assisting him. I told him he could sit in the lobby until a man showed up, which was a few days later. Then all my male co-workers refused to help him. I'm an Asian guy working in the electronics department of a retail store. One day some kids, 13-14-year-olds, walked by me and said, "Hey, what's up, Jackie Chan?" I told them to go themselves and that they were white cracker pieces of. They ran and told their parents, who then reported it to my manager. Luckily the manager just laughed at the situation and told me to carry on. So I used to work full time for an electronics retailer. Spoiler alert. It was Best Buy, where I sold TVs. I honestly didn't mind most people. Even when customers would get pissed off, I would find myself just kind of smiling inside at how seriously people take such little things. The one thing that did me off was when a guy came in with his own janky tube TV from the early 90s in a cart. He demanded that he test out various antennas that we sold because the last one didn't work. A guy who worked for me and also happened to be a pretty good friend politely and patiently explained to the man that what he needed was a digital converter box. He even took one out of the packaging and set it up for the crazy bastard. This whole while, the asshole with the TV was calling my co-worker an idiot, telling him that he didn't know what he was talking about, and demanding that he set up just the antenna. That's all I need. See, my buddy was being a good sport about it, chuckling a little bit and repeating himself. When I overheard that mouth breather calling my co-worker an idiot, I flipped. I didn't do anything too crazy. I walked up to the pair of them and kicked the guy out of the store, which I had no real authority to do. It was very satisfying though. Too long, didn't read. I kicked a guy out of the Best Buy I worked at for being an asshole, despite lacking the proper authority. My friend was a kindergarten teacher until she called one of her students after the kid squirted a bunch of glue in her face and then threw glitter. We had an old lady pay for 4 cans of Coke, then grab 5 and try to leave. She then refused to open her handbag and return it because we charged too much, $1.50 per cold can. Now, we're a small business and we regularly lose hundreds of dollars every year to theft of these cans alone. My boss, 6+, firmly takes her by the arm and walks her around the block. Bottle shop next door, $2.24 a can. Fish and chip shop across the road, $2.50. Cafe next to that, $2.50. News agency next to that, $2.20. And the internet cafe next door, $2.00. Before coming back into our shop by himself with the extra can in hand. He never did come back. Much love OP. I had a table of 6. All douchebags. Basically treated me like a douche the whole time. Acted like highly entitled American teenagers. Same sad story. But then, they tried to dine and dash on me. In a former life, I was an all-state linebacker. And I cambered dog like a mother. So, after running a 4.40 and full waiter gear, I catch them in the parking lot. Guy says what? Do something and pushes me. So I boxed his ears. Hard. Really hard. As much as I hated this guy. Don't do this to people. It dropped him. Anyway. Cops get called. He agreed to not press charges for my hurting his ears. In exchange for the restaurant not pressing charges for the 3rd-degree shoplifting. And the cops made him pay the tab. Of course I got stiffed on the tip. It was still the most awesome violent win of my life. I got fired. But I am still friends with my former manager from this instance. I was working at a canteen at my local football club when some guy bought a hot dog with a $5 note. When I brought him his change, he looked at me and said he gave me a 20. He had done this before at a busier time and I hadn't noticed till after. So I was certain this time. I refused to give him the extra change and he threatened me. I was around 14. And none of the other asshole customers did anything. My manager then made me give him the extra money. Never have I been more pissed off at work.